and related areas. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this week is Brandon Carney. Brandon is the co-founding partner and chief executive officer of Divergent Language Solutions, an international language service provider. He brings almost 20 years of executive experience, having worked with global translation and interpreting companies. Brandon currently focuses on the strategic growth of the company, key partner relations, and the day-to-day operations of Divergent. Prior to founding Divergent, Brandon established and oversaw the San Francisco office of Geotext Translations, a then industry leader in foreign language services for the legal community. Brandon holds a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish with a minor in philosophy from Gettysburg College. Brandon, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. I'd like to start first with having you tell us a little more about Divergent, what it is, what you all do.
Sure. So as you mentioned, Divergent is generically what is known as a full-service language service provider. What that really means is that we handle all languages, and really, our main business is translation and interpreting for the legal community and the business community. But really, if wherever foreign language comes into the legal space, there's something that we can do, whether that's on-site doc review. It's really nothing in our world is standard. And so it's really about being an excellent consultant, understanding what the pain points of our clients are and how we can bring our resources to bear with foreign language in their workflow. We have offices here in San Francisco, New York, most recently expanded into Europe with brought in a new partner this year, which is quite exciting. He's a longtime friend and colleague of mine. We actually started at Geotext together, and then he established the London office. I established the San Francisco office. And so kind of a bit of getting the band back together with our expansion into Europe. So that's exciting. We really focus on being being a provider to the largest law firms in the world, and high touch, white glove service for all foreign language needs of those firms and corporate legal departments.
All languages is a lot of languages.
That's right.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, so it's look, we see more Spanish translations than we do Amharic, right? For instance, but that's just last week someone needed a contract translated into Mongolian. We don't do that every day, but we can do it. And there are resources out there, and so our workflow tends to ebb and flow with the global economy. If you tend to think of kind of what's up at the moment in the global economy, then chances are good that, we're probably seeing an uptick in whether that be German, Japanese, Spanish, Italian, just whatever the case may be. And so, while we certainly service all languages there, because some of those rarer ones, we don't do all the time, but then again, we do a lot of pro bono work as well, and a lot of asylum work. And in that asylum work, you will see a lot of those rare languages kind kind of some native languages from South America, Mayan languages, that type of stuff. So it's certainly out there, but and then you get Samsung sues Panasonic, and then it's all Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. So it really runs the gamut, but it's we're designed to be flexible that way so that we can service the needs of those clients.
Translation is performed, of course, for many different services or purposes, not always with the same end in mind. What are some of the different reasons why you are translating content for people?
So, look, as the world gets smaller and borders are kind of dropping, and you think of Europe, right? Europe is effectively kind of the United States, but each one of them speaks their own language. And if they're doing business together, then there's going to be translation needs. So, in litigation, if marketing materials, right? If everybody needs to sell their services. So if you're going into a new market, interpreting for depositions, for trials, for meetings, especially with COVID, when everybody's at home, remote interpreting really kind of, as with a lot of technological things these days, got kicked forward maybe a couple of years because out of necessity. So it really runs the gamut. There's a large bank out here that's centered in China that we provide interpreting services for their CEO meetings every month. So it's as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's not as though we make pens and we're just trying to make as many pens, sell as many pens as we can. Each pen, so to speak, that we make is completely different. It's one of the challenges of our business, but also it's something that I've always enjoyed because it's constantly new. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I can certainly bring my experience to bear, but very rarely do I see the same thing, over and over and over again. So it's nice that way, in that it's kind of keeps things shaken up a little bit,
We, of course, here, just as we do for things like artificial intelligence and the use of that in eDiscovery, we hear, when it comes to translation, debates about man versus machine, human versus technology.
Yep, that is the big one. So Google Translate, right? That's the elephant in the room, and the one that probably most people are most familiar with if you're kind of outside of the industry. And the technology is here to stay. However, I will say, a lot of what we do is education. And let me explain to you why what you just asked for is maybe not the best way to go, and let's give you some other options. In our world, it's referred to as MT or NMT, which is neural machine translation. It has its use case, absolutely. But the more kind of regulated industries and very specific, think of a 200-page patent for a cancer drug to be translated from English into Japanese. If you don't have the knowledge in English, you won't even be able to read that in English. So, take that one step further. And it's really just the technology is not yet there. And so for us, it's more about the combination of technology and humans in the workflow to get those efficiencies and cost savings and things like that. It's interesting, there's an industry newsletter that goes out every day from a very well-respected organization. That their newsletter this morning, the headline says, "It's a craft, not math." And I saw this, I thought it was timely, so I printed it out for our chat here. This is based on a recent study by Google. They were having translators, among others, review MT output and kind of blinded and choosing preference. And it was overwhelmingly, says there's a clear preference for human over machine output. It's been fascinating to watch the ongoing complex efforts to mathematically evaluate language for decades. Researchers have pursued the seemingly ever-distant goal of scoring translation quality with scientific precision. However, translation is a craft, maybe even an art, not math. So the perfect quality score may continue to remain elusive. And yes, 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 the neural networks powering MT are just math. I just thought that was very interesting. And it's, in today's world where we're used to getting everything delivered, hitting a button or two on our phone, and it shows up at our front door, when someone's like, wait, you can't just put this through Google Translate? You could. I wouldn't recommend it, and that's where a specialist like ourselves would come into play, where quality is important, and there's accountability really as well, and there's a whole process that we have, a quality control process that all drive towards that end. But it's also, as you kind of mentioned earlier, a big part of what we do is consulting with our clients. What is your end use? What are you using this for? Does this have to be certified and submitted to a court or a tribunal somewhere? Or, do you just need a quick and dirty version to understand what it's saying around a conference room so that you can then further what you're doing? So end use is really is everything for us, because that kind of drives what we will, the solution that we will offer. There's cost and timing and all of those good things, and we can bring a different level of service to bear depending on what you need.
And the way I live in it is not unusual to have a project start with millions of pages of documents, or the equivalent of millions of pages of documents. And it's not unusual these days to have content in multiple languages in a significant percentage of those documents. It's not, I don't think it is at least, cost effective to try to do manual or human translation on all of those from the get-go.
I wish it were.
So what workflows make sense in those types of situations?
Sure. So, and that's a great point, and one of the a great use case within the legal space. And this is, some of our close partnerships are with eDiscovery companies for this very reason. We have 10 million documents that are in 4 different languages. What do we do with that? Where do you even start with that, right? But a good use case for MT is you zap it all with MT. Maybe you do some keyword searches. Maybe and kind of as you do each one of those things, right, the universe gets a little bit smaller. And if you're doing a keyword search, or somebody, once you take that 10 million down to 100,000, you have a translator just review them to say, okay, they're talking about this, so we're going to call this one a hot doc and put it over here. And then, 1,000, 10,000 documents shake out, and we say, we need these. We need full human translation, certifiable, or whatever the case may be. But, you just took your cost significantly down, significantly. Well, I giggle to say I wish that it would, because that would be astronomical in dollars to translate that many documents. But, it's normally when someone comes to us with that, after we give them a range of pricing, and after they pick themselves off the floor from sticker shock, they're like, okay, talk to me about what else you can do. So they've started out with those millions of documents. They've got 4 different languages. They feel under pressure to get stuff done quickly. They come to you probably naively thinking that you can give them a price and you can give them a throughput that allows that all to be manually translated, and you come back and say, no, sorry, ain't going to happen. Where does the discussion go from there? Well, where that discussion goes is what I would normally say is I would say, well, let me explain why. The average professional translator translates between 2,000 and 3,000 words per day. If you call the average page 250 words, the average document 2 pages, and we have 10 million documents. You can start to do some math and see how absolutely Herculean of a task that would be, and what kind of resources you need to bring to bear. The largest project that I've ever worked on, which I can now say I got when I had precisely 0 employees by 30 million words. It was about 2.5 million words into 15 languages. So we had 15 different teams of folks, and it was highly medical, and so you have to you have to handle all of those. But yeah, it can get real large there real fast. And so, it's about, we are where we excel is high quality, very fast in the legal space. But there is a limit to reality, right? There is an absolute limit to reality. We can do, I think we've translated 600,000 words in 48 hours. But we have to say, look, if this is what you need, this is how we can get you to that goal line. Right. We always want to say, how can we get you to your goal line as efficiently and cost effectively as possible? And that, again, it varies just based on the whatever the circumstances are of a given project.
It sounds like a classic example of scoping and effective scoping and good project management.
100%. It's really about, like I said, being an excellent consultant up front to really kind of sniff out, okay, what do you need? Why do you need it? Oh, well, you think you need this. Let's talk about that. And then really come up with the game plan. And then the second part, right, the PM part is the execution thereof. It is really saying, okay, this is our game plan. Client signed off on it. We're signed off on it. Let's go hit the pavement and make it happen. It's very demanding. We work with the largest law firms on the planet. And as I'm sure you know, they are very demanding, but it's an opportunity. We're a 24/7 shop, and if we can service them and provide service or product and quality service, then they'll be our best friend for years. And that's really, we play for the long-term relationship to be a part of these case teams. We don't want to be just the vendor that comes in and, we really get down in the trenches with the case teams in some of these big matters. And that allows us to do our job even better for them.
On the big matters with the major law firms, what are some of the hot button issues you have to deal with?
Sure. Well, it's always going to be speed and timing and price, right? Those are the obvious ones. But then, there's confidentiality, obviously. That's kind of the cornerstone of our business. We're working on these huge global matters. Confidentiality is everything. And some attorneys, if they've never had the opportunity to work on a case that requires foreign language assistance, we have to kind of help shepherd them through. And so, again, going back to we don't want to be just the guy that comes in and drops off the copier paper once a month. We really need to kind of get down in the trenches. But so confidentiality, conflicts, we have to ensure that we're not conflicted, which can be challenging because we don't always know, right? We don't always know because we're a vendor in line. And but we will obviously do our best to sniff those out. And if we're conflicted out, we're very transparent about that. That's not, we don't mess around with stuff like that. Just trying to think hot button issues. Yeah, it's you never know. Going back to my previous comment, right? There's things I'm not thinking of, but that's kind of part of it. Is every day is its own little entity that you never know what's going to happen there.
Do those issues look different than when you deal with smaller vendors, smaller organizations? You can draw a big distinction. One of the main distinctions, I guess, between kind of corporate and corporate legal, right? If we're working with GM's corporate counsel on internal policies that need to be translated into 50 languages to push out to all of their offices, right? That's a whole different animal than if we're working on some huge litigation. Just use the Samsung Panasonic example, right? And I also think between large and small shops, probably one of the biggest differences is just demand. Why can't you do this tomorrow morning? And the smaller shop will be like, well, you can take an extra day if you need to. That's refreshing. So it's all, like I said, it's all part of the game. And if you can service those requests, there's a lot of opportunity there. And that's how our company is built, is to be able to service the high demand attorney or eDiscovery firm or corporate counsel
and to do it, to be able to pop up that team of 20 linguists to tackle this project over the next 48 hours, immediately. That's where our relationships with our vendors, our translators, is paramount. If George calls me at 11:30 on a Friday night, and you've got a week's worth of work that someone just dropped on your desk and you need it by Monday morning, if we can make that happen for you, number one, we're going to make you look good to your people, right? It's very demanding, but some of our largest clients have found us. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of, and it was early days, called me on a Saturday. I was out somewhere. I came back, sat down at my desk, didn't leave, talked to that gentleman once every half hour for about the next 36 hours, stayed up overnight with them, got it all done. And to this day, they are one of our top 3 clients every year and have been for the past 5 or 6 years. So it's, there's an opportunity there, and there's a void that we fill, and allow attorneys are good at attorneying, right? And so you're not going to let the electrician or the painting contractor, if you're building a house, run the electrical wire, right? And that's kind of the example. We are a specialist, and while machine translation is certainly there, and technology and great technological advancements are continuing to happen in our space every day, and they are here to stay, which a lot of people, it's quite the topic in our space, as you can imagine, as it is in many spaces, right? Ours is a very human one, and there's lots of folks wondering, are we going to be replaced by the machines? And what I say when people ask me about this, specialize, right? Machine translation technology, just as a whole, will for sure, and it already has begun to kind of eat away at the bottom levels of the industry, right? The more generalist, the general stuff, the more repeatable stuff, a manual for a Caterpillar engine, right, that they have to release every year. Well, it's not going to change that much. And that's actually, it's quite technical. It's very repetitive. And so that's a good example of where you can bring to bear technology. And so, that stuff is here to stay. We recognize that, and it's a shifting landscape, and we have to shift with it if we want to remain relevant. And so there's a service we offer. It's called MTPE, which is machine translation with post editing, whereby it's run through a machine, but then a high level skilled translator will come along and kind of clean it up. That's an approach. That said, though, you're still never going to get human parity there. You're not going to get to the same level. But again, not to be a broken record, it depends what your end use is. Maybe that will be good enough for what your purposes are, right? You're not going to submit that to court. We won't put our name on it as a certified version and submit it to court. But if that's not what you're doing, then it might be a perfectly suitable solution at half the cost. So again, it's what are your needs? How does language present a problem to you? And let's talk about that and figure out how we can help you along. And then the use of technology in our workflow to gain efficiencies and be able to execute for our clients.
What are, to the extent you haven't covered them already, what are some of the myths you encounter, and how do you debunk them?
The myths, well, the main one is just a lot of people don't know what they don't know, and that's fine, because they've, unless you've been in the trenches of the language industry, which not many people have, they shouldn't be expected to know that. And so it's really it's an uphill battle against machine translation as well. Why can't you just dump all these documents in there? Well, okay. A lot of people won't even think about the source content. What format is the source content in? A lot of these litigations, we'll see fifth, sixth hand scans of bylaws of Puerto Rico, right? Like, you can't, that has to be OCR'd. OCR, if anybody doesn't know what that means, it's optical character recognition. And, the technology there, while there are great OCR tools, it's not perfect. And if you can't get it into a workable live format, you can't run it through a machine. So, it's something as simple as that. Or you might have to spend a lot. It might not make sense from a financial standpoint to spend the dollars that you need to get that content to a point where it can go into the machine. So there's all sorts of different levers that can be pulled or have to be looked at, when you're making these decisions. But that's the biggest one is kind of really explaining to our clients, look, this is not a silver bullet. It is a tool in our, in our tool belt that we can use, potentially, depending on what it is that you need. But it's not a silver bullet where we just say, hey, we click a button and then everything just snaps into a different language. Language is not one for one. It is not even close to one for one. And again, if you don't work in the field or don't have any experience, that's a common misconception. That's totally understandable.
So, Brandon, I've got one last question for you. Put on your robe and cap, look into your crystal ball, and tell us what this whole field is going to look like at some, whatever you choose, point in the future.
Sure. And look, it's a great question. Technology obviously is going to continue to progress. And as I kind of alluded to, I think it's going to continue to gobble up pieces of the market. But those are going to be the lower end. I mean no disrespect by saying that, but just, the more general stuff, and the more regulated stuff, and the specializations, the specialized, patents and heavy duty financial, medical, bet the business legal work. That's going to continue to require a specialist touch. Now, will machines ever get there? Maybe. I hope I'm on a beach somewhere at that time, to be honest. But look, it's the evolution of things, right? Technology is pushing us forward, and we have to, as I mentioned, we have to either embrace it and find out how we can evolve with it and use it to our clients and our own benefit, or we will be gobbled up. And so, I think it's about kind of using technology in the workflow, and that will continue to progress and progress at a faster rate. I do believe, but it's it's a very interesting kind of piece of our industry, as it is with a lot of other industries, and something that, folks like myself in our space, we talk a lot about it and think a lot about how it's going to affect us. So it's just really remaining agile, open to change, which can be hard, and keeping up with things.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Brandon. Brandon Carney is co-founding partner and chief executive officer of Divergent Language Solutions. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Thanks all for joining us today. Please come back and join us again next Friday, May 14th, when our guest will be Joseph Tate of Cozen O'Connor. Brandon, thanks so much.
Thanks, George.